of antisemitism.
Jewish.
Now, I lived in Manchester for 7 years and I made a lot of Jewish friends.
We've allowed people in from countries and cultures where the hatred of Jews is not only common, but it's actively encouraged.
Hi there, and thank you to everybody for joining me for yet another video. Back at the channel, has just gone viral. If you're new here, we like to cover crime and news, give analysis, and also bring you information that sometimes the mainstream media won't always tell you. So please like, share, comment and subscribe. And let's get straight into the video. A quick disclaimer that this video is not intended to cause anybody alarm, harassment or distress, and is merely a point of view and an investigative point of view of the facts and evidence and things that are presented to us already in the mainstream media. After the Manchester synagogue attack, the British Jewish community has demanded that anti-Semitic content be brought under the Online Safety Bill enforcement with powers to arrest. In the wake of the deadly attack on the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue in Manchester on Yom Kippur, which was the 2nd of October 2025, the Jewish community and its leaders are urging the UK government to tighten laws governing hate speech online. They argue that the recent proposal on the Online Safety Bill must now be amended so that anti-Semitic tweets and posts are treated as criminal offences, with enforceable powers to arrest those responsible. The assault during one of the holiest days in the Jewish calendar has shocked the nation, reigniting concerns over anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic tweets, and prompted calls for legislation and action to be taken. Critics of the bill say that as it stands, it does not go far enough to protect vulnerable groups from targeted hate, especially when it comes to what is shared and amplified on social media. On October the 2nd, 2025, a car and knife attack took place outside the synagogue in Crumpsall, Manchester, during Yom Kippur. 2 people were killed and several were injured, and the attacker was shot dead by police at the scene. In response to the attack, Prime Minister Keir Starmer convened an emergency Cobra meeting and pledged increased security for synagogues and Jewish communities across the country. But sadly enough, he couldn't do this for 3 young girls in a dance hall in Southport. The UK's chief rabbi, Sir Ephraim Mervis, called for a national soul-searching on anti-Semitism. Although I'm very surprised as a UK country that's supposed to be known and based as a Christian country that we have something called a UK chief rabbi. Israeli politicians added international pressure, demanding that the UK crack down on what they described as rampant anti-Semitic incitement across British streets, campuses and social media. In the days following the attack, several Jewish organisations and community leaders have pressed the government to explicitly include anti-Semitic social media content in the scope of the Online Safety Bill, not merely as harassment or disinformation issues, but as a specific hate crime category with criminal enforcement mechanisms. Their key demands include, the first one being explicit inclusion of anti-Semitic posts under the bill's enforcement regime, with clear definitions to prevent loopholes. The second one would be for powerful law enforcements to arrest and prosecute users who post anti-Semitic content, especially when it comes to encouraging or glorifying violence. The third one would be a stronger duty of care on social media platforms to monitor, remove and report anti-Semitic content, rather than relying on voluntary compliance or limited regulations. The fourth one would be victim prosecution mechanisms, ensuring that the Jewish individuals and institutions harmed by online hate can seek redress and have their complaints processed promptly. Supporters have argued without these measures, anti-Semitic rhetoric, already prevalent in parts of social media and public protest, will continue to fuel real-world violence and terror. They point to recent increase in hate crime, campus unrest and threats to Jewish institutions as evidence that the current legal protections are insignificant. Some critics of the mainstream media and the government have suggested that recent coverage of the attack and subsequent demands have exposed a deeper bias. Mainstream media news as all being Jewish themselves, they claim, arguing that the Jewish influence dominates media narratives. These views, however, are contentious and broadly rejected by analysts, academics and many community leaders, who say that they echo conspiracy theories that have historically fueled anti-Semitism. Others warn that the Online Safety Bill, especially if expanded with strong enforcement powers for anti-Semitic content, could be weaponised to suppress free speech, particularly for those critical of Israel. They argue that the bill's design may allow the government to censor political protest and debate under the guise of hate speech enforcement. Critical discussions of Israel's military actions or public support for Palestinians' causes might be silenced if the definition of antisemitism in law is stretched. The use of arrest powers and criminal penalties can intimidate activists, academics and journalists, effectively chilling public discourage. Proponents of stronger enforcement counter that recognising a legitimate right to free speech does not justify tolerating incitements of violence, hate or terror. They argue that anti-Semitism is distinct from political critique of Israel, while criticism of any state is allowed. Calls for the destruction of Jewish people or institutions and denial of their safety or rights cross the line. Experts in hate speech and digital misinformation have since warned that such narratives distort reality and risk inflaming the very divisions the attacker sought to exploit. Mainstream outlets emphasise national solidarity and the need to tackle rising anti-Semitism both online and offline. Government officials reaffirm plans to strengthen the online safety bill, which aims to hold social media companies accountable for hate content. But as the Jewish community expresses its concerns and outrage, public figures have united in condemnation after the Manchester synagogue attack. Debates followed over social media with several celebrity personalities. After the tragic attack on Manchester synagogue, messages of solidarity and grief poured in across Britain and the media and the entertainment industries. Prominent Jewish figures from football pundit Gary Neville to broadcaster Vanessa Feltz and even singer Robbie Williams used their platform to denounce anti-Semitism and call for unity. While many praised the outpouring of support, some online discussions quickly veered into toxic territory, with conspiracy-triggered claims suggesting that the expression of sympathy from Jewish celebrities or journalists reflected bias in the media coverage. But it also appears from the Manchester synagogue attack there is a byproduct effect of this event. The byproduct of this event is that celebrities, musicians, film stars and all the news reporters have come forward and denounced their association to the Jewish community. I was very surprised that Gary Lineker and also David Beckham hadn't spoke up on this issue.
School kids who, if you go to a Jewish school, you don't wear a uniform that shows that you're Jewish.
Well, I remember growing up,
Shameful.
going to school.
Yes.
And you were frightened of wearing your school uniform in case you were identified, and yet we were punished both ways. You would have been beaten up or whatever because you were identified with a particular school or a particular religion.
I've read today online that recently you were walking down the street and someone was calling you fascist, this, that and the other.
Fascist Zionist scum. I came out of LBC having just finished my show on a Sunday evening, and they're usually, the protests are at 1:45 to 2. So there's never been one at 6 before. I wasn't even expecting it. Normally when I see one, I sort of cringe into the shop doorway hoping nobody will recognise me, wonder why I haven't brought a COVID mask with me. Realise that the reason I haven't brought one is I just can't bear to. I can't bear to cover my face, to walk through the streets of the city that I live in and was born in and have lived in all my life. Every week I think I should bring a mask in case there's a protest and someone recognises me. Then I think, well, I'm not, and I don't. But it was 6 o'clock and I hadn't expected it. I sort of shuffled into the doorway of a shop hoping to sort of, disappear into the shadows. Also thought that I was being ridiculously dramatic because I hadn't been shouted at before, and I'd walked past many of these marches, and then suddenly it was over the tannoy and it was sort of deafening decibels, and I wrapped my head around, obviously, because you hear your name being screamed that loudly, it's hard not to look round, and some bloke is chasing me, for God's sake.
I completely understand why a lot of Jewish people feel this way. I'm Jewish myself. Literally, when I leave the studio, I'm going to a synagogue to perform security duty.
Well, I'll tell you, we've allowed people in from countries and cultures where the hatred of Jews is not only common, but is actively encouraged. Our politicians and weak law enforcement have allowed Jew hatred to fester and spread like a cancer in Britain.
But as sports personalities, musicians, Hollywood stars and even news reporters come forward to announce their faith and their community, it wasn't until I did some investigative work and research that I stumbled across all of this. Could this possibly be the reason that they want to silence people and people not be allowed to speak out or have what we call free speech that seems to be non-existent these days? Is the enforcement of arrest and the incorporation of anti-Semitism into the online safety bill more about silencing people who want to speak up about things like this? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think there is an alternative motive for the online safety bill incorporating anti-Semitism? Don't forget to smash subscribe, smash the like button too. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you in the next video.